Being 7:01, I'd like to call the budget meeting of the City Council, Laconia City Council, to order to June 5th, 2023, in the Armand Baldock Council Chambers. Before we start, Kurt, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be glad to. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kurt. Madam Clerk, present is our recording secretary and city clerk, Katie Gargano, and we are joined by Kurt Beatty and Mr. Smith, our finance director. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Counselor Cheney,
Here?
Counselor Susie,
Here.
Counselor Haynes,
Here.
Counselor Felch.
Here. Let the record show we have a quorum, and we will begin the meeting with Public Works Department. Wes Anderson, you have the floor.
Am I up? Okay, I couldn't tell.
Wes, just a second. Wes asked if anybody has a question on anything, as he has the slides available, he'll be glad to answer the question, so he can be interrupted.
Okay, so this is what we're gonna talk about in order tonight. Budget overview from really the general fund side, capital improvement projects, internal service fund, and sanitary sewer. Okay, so the budget guidance that we got was don't exceed 4.5% compared to 2023's budget. Really, for my discretionary, that's about $825,000 is the discretionary portion. The rest is salaries or ISF. So that, the 4.5 I always base off of the discretionary portion. The one thing we have found, and holds true for just about everything dealing construction side, construction costs increase or exceeding the CPI increase, and both the materials and salaries. Really don't see it dropping down, because as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, they added $500 billion to the federal infrastructure program. So they're not really decreasing what they're doing, they're keeping about the same or going more, you know, based off the inflation. So I don't see costs coming down just because everyone's still gonna be busy. Other costs that are spiking on us, of course, will be electricity once our contract expires, and then repair parts for all of our vehicles. One of the biggest issues what I have right now is personnel shortage. If you look at the highway division, up till 6 o'clock this morning, I was short 5 of my 16 positions. I had a new person start this morning. He's about the only one that applied in about the last 3 months since advertising. And the simplest way of putting it is, now I start off my conversation with prospective candidates saying, this is what I can offer. Most of the time, I don't get beyond that point, because the salaries I can offer is so low compared to what they're getting other places. We end the conversation at that point, or they're polite and I never hear back from them. Sanitary sewer is the other position where we're short, and that's really the supervisor's position. Was Matt Mooney, and we've had one applicant for about the 4 months that it's been advertised. And the real issue is our salaries are really not competitive, and we'll talk more about that later. So as it's sitting right now, for today, I'm short 4 people in my highway division. So what does that mean impact-wise? So low priority tasks are deferred, may not get done this summer, may get pushed off until we can get more people. Even with that, I'm still gonna have to contract for more repair and services. For special events, I may have to go out and get other departments to assist us. Right now, Parks is helping with solid waste removal during motorcycle week because of the shortage of people that we have. Snow removal, I don't have an issue. I don't think I have an issue with streets. Depends upon who decides to retire between now and then. Sidewalks is going to be the issue that we're going to have to work on this summer. And the other piece is we may have to start looking at volunteers for certain things that volunteers are appropriate for. Okay, so what's the real cause? Hourly wages are not competitive with the local and regional market. And our contracts, which establish the set wage rates, don't expire to June 30th of 2025. And I'm probably the only department that has two separate contracts. My highway division has asked me, with the two mechanics also being an ASME. Everybody else is SEA. So when we go to negotiate what I do with one, I gotta make sure the other side is happy at the same time. And that has made some challenges come up. And we're just not the only one in the boat. Other departments experience the same thing. Guilford is doing fairly well right now because they increased their salaries by $3 an hour the 1st of January, and they got another $2 an hour planned. I just don't know exactly when that one's coming up. We are looking at some concepts to recruit and retain employees, and we're working with the unions to negotiate that. It's really not a change to the contract, but more of a side MOU until the next piece is. We want to be able to offer a sign-on incentive for new CDL drivers. You're going to find that most firms, Casella, Waste Management, they're in the neighborhood of $2,000 to about $5,000, depending upon where they are in the state, for a sign-on incentive for that. Waste Management's about the same. The other piece, if you look at some of the bulletin boards or billboards around there or the newspaper, you got Bryant that's offering up to $40 an hour, depending upon experience, and GMI is offering $35 an hour. We're just not competitive at that. And most are offering health benefits, 401ks with matching from it, so it's getting tight out there. The other piece is looking at it, at least for the people who are already employed, we're talking about implementing their critical shortage pay, which means during the time frame we're short a lot of people, we would give an extra $100 a week in salary for a certain period of time to make up for the fact they're working harder because people aren't there. We're also looking at making an agreement so we can pay for the cost of obtaining a CDL license. Right now, if you're going outside to get your Class B license, which is what we have for most of ours, it's about $5,500 in classroom instruction between in-class and the driving lessons before they can go to take their test. We're also looking at training new employees in-house if possible. There's really two pieces to it. The classroom we can do online, but it's about 38 hours of driving time for one person with one of our CDL drivers to be able to, never mind all the federal paperwork you have to do. So how are we gonna pay for the interim solutions? Salary savings, and we'll probably have to look at some degree of reduction in services, depending upon what we actually come up with from negotiating with the two unions. But whatever we do, we still have to plan to recruit and retain pay for recruiting and retaining the employees, any contract work increases that we do during the summer, and if we don't have enough employees, that's also gonna pay for contractors to help us during the winter season. Keeping on big picture wise, from the general fund standpoint, this is where we were in 2023. You can see it's 105,288 increase from 2024. These are only our major lines. Probably the one thing you pay attention, you'll see coming up is the winter maintenance slide. Winter maintenance, we went from 265 to 270, $5,000 increase, but you'll see what the cost of salt did to us later on. Streetlights, we're getting much more fidelity in regards to what we're saving in regards to LED streetlights. The tariff keeps changing, and in certain circumstances we'll lower it for it. I did my best estimate of what I think the impact of once we run out of electricity contract, what the cost will be, and that's what I estimated the fiscal year 2024 budget on. And then ISF, of course, is what we pay to basically ourselves for the vehicle maintenance. Salt price last year went from $58.16 a ton to $73.10 a ton. Pretty good jump. It's typically not that much. We're usually in the range of what you see for this year. Someplace around a $3 increase is typical. So this year, the increase from what we paid last year is $10,000, but I only budgeted for $5,000. So I already know I've got to pull $5,000 of that out of another account to be able to cover costs. And then again, overtime will depend upon what I have to do, you know, to keep the roads and sidewalks open with the crew size that I have right now. The typical things that you see, we still have to do. We have the regulatory requirements for maintaining the condition of the signs for reflectivity. We still got traffic signal maintenance and the striping that you see on the roads, as well as tree removal, and I'll call it not really the emergency repairs, but the repairs that we have to do in-house because manholes, catch basins, and other structures fail. This also includes the landfill and groundwater monitoring that's out there. Just to remind, we have 3 active landfills. By that, I mean we're working on them. So we got the Laconia Disposal Gardens, which has been capped. We continue to have expansion of the plume from the landfill. So far, there has been 3 extensions of the water main because wells keep getting contaminated. The first one went along Endicott Street East to basically Gatehouse Colony. The second one extended it down to the houses just past Al Mitchell's place, just as you're going down the hill, just to the other side of Gatehouse Colony. As we were doing that, new person bought a house, drilled a new well, and that one came positive. So we continued on a little bit further to get that house. And now the plume is starting to go further down Summit Street, and we got 2 houses on Summit Street we're gonna have to connect. So we're working that budget now. We got a little bit left from the last extension along Endicott Street. That's about 40,000 left. We're figuring it's probably gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 80,000 to connect those 2 houses. One piece that has come up in the Laconia Disposal Gardens is a condo complex just on the border with Guilford has tested an increased level over the acceptable level for arsenic. Arsenic can either be a substance from the landfill or a substance from the natural rock outcroppings. So we did a very good argument back to Department of Environmental Services saying it's not a fault of the landfill. We're waiting on a response back. If they don't agree with that, we will be having to provide water to that condo complex also. Frank Bean Road burn dump, of course, is capped. We've got a little bit more paperwork left onto it, but it doesn't have anything to impact with the actual landfill itself. And Old Moran Road is the one that we're working on now to get capped properly. It was never capped when it was closed back in the 60s. Department of Environmental Services has been nice to us, have basically not put pressure on it because we're paying off the bonds on Frank Bean Road landfill. In this particular case, as long as we keep showing progress to get to there, they're happy. On the Accept As Is program, this comes out of the operational budget. I've had 21 meetings with property owners, preparing the documentation on 13. Some you can see here that we've had 7 site visits where the council's gone out to look. Of those, we mailed out 3 sets already to all the property owners to get the deeds back to us. Of those 3 properties we sent, at least every single street has 3 property owners who have not returned the easement deeds back to us. 1 is 5. So we're waiting to see what happens over the summer because most of these are in the Methodist campground area, which of course are more summer residents. If we don't hear anything back, it becomes a black hole, then we'll be coming back through the city manager saying, at some point, we gotta terminate services to them because they're not willing to give us the necessary documentation to make it a public street. I've got 3 more that we've just got back from the attorney. We're getting ready to put those out to the property owners to start that process. That is Hillcrest, Lucerne, and Bayside Court. And the attorneys got the go-ahead to work on Kingsley. And then I've got 8 that are on the waiting list, basically waiting for a new batch of money so I can start the process of surveying those. Solid waste side of the house. We have 2 contracts. We have Casella's contract, which basically is collection and recycling. Then we have waste management contract that handles the transfer station and with a separate contract that handles disposal now for us. The current collection contract has a fuel price limit. If it's $4 or less, there's no adjustment. If it goes over $4, there's an adjustment based off of how many gallons they use that month and what the difference is. A little bit different with the transfer station. Their fuel adjustment, it works both ways. So if it goes up over a 6-month period, we pay them more, but if it goes down, they lower the cost of it. So it really depends upon what happens. But key on for Casella's collection portion, the garbage and trash collection is the CPI they use. Not our CPI, but the very little brief one. Yes, there is one for CPI for garbage and trash collection services. But the minimum is an annual 5% increase. So when I did my estimate, I figured around 6 to 6.5. We'll see how that comes out. On the recycling side of the house, and you'll see the information later, they process our recycling for us. It's a commodity market. So the value of the product is really based off of what the people need to produce new stuff. So during a recession, the value of the product drops, and you'll see the effect on a later slide. On the transfer station side, we pay hauling costs, and we pay construction and demolition debris. And we'll talk more about that in the future. And on the disposal side of the house, we have a 7-year contract with Waste Management with firm fixed prices for each of the 7 years for disposals. But again, that is still a commodity because we only really have 4, although it's 3 sites where we can dump. Casella's up north, that's at the process of probably filling up if they don't expand it. You got Waste Management in Rochester, you got the incinerator in Pennacook, and then you got the one up in the Berlin area. Okay, so this is where we are for household waste and recycling. Blue is household waste. You can see last year we did just almost 16,000 tons of household waste. I want to make sure I get to the right point, so I'm giving facts. Okay. Of that, 27% of that tonnage is from curbside. That's what we pick up, and basically taxes pay for disposing of that. 51% of the tonnage is from Laconia's paying customers, whether it's brought by a resident or brought by a hauler. And then 22% is from customers outside of Laconia, Guilford or another area. For this fiscal year, right now, we're sitting around 13,100 tons as of the end of April. So we're probably close to about 15,500, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more tons. And then we're probably going to be around 770 tons for recycling. Okay, and then, okay, so here's the important part that we don't need to consider for tonight, but we're going to have to consider before December timeframe, because the contract for disposal changes on the 1st of January with Waste Management. Okay, so household waste, we pay a hauling cost. So between now and December, we'll have a couple of adjustments based off of fuel prices and inflation. So right now, we're paying $17.81. Disposal cost for up to December 31st is $82.70. So the total cost is $100.51. Based off of what I know right now, and what I think it's gonna be, my best estimate is we're gonna be paying something around $106 per ton to dispose of trash after the first of the year. Our fee off of that right now for any Laconia resident who brings it to the transfer station is $105. So we'll be starting to lose money after the first of the new calendar year. Outside of town is $110, so we're still making some money to help defray other costs at the transfer station. And construction and demolition debris is $150, and it's gonna probably cost us someplace around $120 a ton to dispose of it. So between now and then, I'll be working with the city manager and working with you to determine what we wanna do before the 1st of January in regards to adjusting the rates, so we're not losing money on disposing of our household waste. This is the recycling history from basically April of 19. You can see how during, I won't say boom times, but we're not in a recession, or we're not having COVID and everyone's buying things. We're paying someplace between about, at that time, just around $100 a ton, went up to just underneath the 140, that was in the 135 range. And then you can start seeing the effects of COVID. Everybody was buying things, they needed the recycling products to make more things, so the value of the commodity went up. And at one point in September of 2021, we were actually making money to help defray the collection costs on recycling. But that only lasted for a short period of time. Economy started slowing down, they didn't need the product, and the value of the commodity dropped, and cost adjustments for processing came into effect. So we were paying, at one point, around $150 a ton. As of what we paid for May, which I just got it right now, we're paying $130.20 per ton. So we're actually paying more to dispose of our recycling per ton than we are of our household trash. Keeping on the general fund side, but switching from the operational standpoint to the capital program. This is the slide I show every year. You can see in 2022, the major difference in how many miles we did is we didn't really do a crack sealing program that year. Between COVID and other things that came up, we focused on doing more shims and overlays and mills and overlays. So this year, we're making sure we get our crack sealing. You'll see the numbers come up, but again, total piece that as far as the residents are concerned is really the blue, the reddish brown, and the little blue on top. For the upcoming fiscal year, this is what's programmed. About $1.5 million from the city manager's recommendation for roads. There is a Senate Bill 270 that's sort of similar to what happened last year. The Senate may take some of the excess revenue that the state's gotten and pass it down to the municipalities for bridges and roads. The original plan was $20 million for bridges, $20 million for roads. There is an adjustment coming of 10 million, but the way they worded it, you can't tell if they're going up to 30 million or if they're going down to 10 million. So we're sort of waiting for more negotiations, more comments from the Senate committee to figure out which way they're leaning. On the bridge, most of the money that we go on is Messer Street. It's a continuation of what basically we did in the 2014, 2015 timeframe. We're gonna strip the asphalt off the deck and do spot repairs of the concrete because it's falling. The salt's gotten in there, the concrete's starting to fall apart. We need to do it to make it safe and keep the loads up for the vehicles that use it. Parking garage, we asked for $30,000 for safety inspection and repairs. We don't know if we're gonna be still responsible for it, the parking garage at that time. Most likely case we are, so we plan money for that. And then the crosswalk across Endicott Street North is an ADA request that we had from somebody from Meredith Bridge, so it makes it up to a higher priority on it, and that's one of the ones we'll be focusing on. You've seen this before. We're still doing our own soil testing services to make sure we're getting compaction standards. We have a project inspector on site, either city or one that we can contract for with a consultant. We're still focused on keeping good roads good, and we're still trying to get a 5-year plan. We don't necessarily put it out to the public because things change, but it's a good idea of what we're thinking so we can start phasing work with water department and the other utilities that are in the ground. Other actions, just a reminder from the ADA improvements at traffic signals, which tends to be a lot of our concerns are brought up at that level, is we have 4 that we have not done. Main and Oak, Beacon Street, Easton Church, and Union Church, Union Guilford. Union Church and Union Guilford, we have planned for when we do the upgrade along Union Avenue from Main Street to Guilford Ave. The other 2, we're just basically waiting whenever we can get the money to do it. For the upcoming, whoops, that should be 2023. That's this year's, excuse me. You're already seeing that we've been putting asphalt down on Weirs Boulevard. We did Lake Street already. Towards the end of the calendar year, we'll be doing Elm Street, basically from Hickory Stick Lane to Parade. Summer Street, we're waiting on Water Department to finish. We'll do Eastman Road, Paugus Street, and Daisy Gardner. Swapping over to the Internal Service Fund. Of course, this is what we charge the other departments to pay for the maintenance division. When we budgeted, the Federal Energy Information Administration puts out it. So we budgeted in December based off the latest they had at $4.65 a gallon and at $3.61 for gasoline. The age of the fleet, as the fleet gets older, of course, more repair parts, and that increases, and then trying to control costs to a degree. Whenever we buy a new vehicle, especially a large one, we try to get the extended warranty to lower our costs.
Ask a question on
Yes.
the fuel prices. Those seem high based on current market
You'll see that in the
conditions.
slide coming up.
Yeah, I was just curious though, how do we purchase, I saw the slide ahead here, how do we purchase our fuel these days?
It's basically a service from a fuel card. So
No, I meant, do we take advantage of a state contract using anything, any other sort of
no,
bulk purchasing? Why not?
we'd have to go to a state site to do it. We don't have our own tanks anymore. So you're either driving to the airport to pick up fuel, and I don't know what they offer at that piece, or
We should look into what the savings would be. It might be worth the drive.
and then we're still working on updating the internal service fund procedures.
I had heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, there's like $1 a gallon difference.
I'll take a look into it. I know we do, we should get a discount though, because we do put a contract out for buying purchase for larger. We don't get a
No,
discount on those. That contract didn't,
we have no fuel contract.
okay.
What we have is we have a fuel card from, basically it's WEX, it's a firm that does it. And they automatically, through the way the system works, take off all the taxes that we don't have to pay. There's some that we do. So the prices, when we actually do the pay is less,
Right.
whatever those taxes are.
I'll look at it.
Yeah, we got rid of our tanks, I want to say 15 years ago approximately. Okay, there is a new paradigm out there, and some of you who bought cars recently may know about it, but I want to start off first with the latest from EPA, and they just released, they're working on new emission standards for cars and light trucks, focus on the model year 2027. That's really targeting for lowering emission standards, having more people buy electric vehicles to reduce the amount of emissions coming out. The other piece is the heavy-duty trucks, same year, new standards for it. The last time that happened was around 2013, 2014. It raised the cost of a truck just for the emission standards alone, someplace between $15,000 to $20,000 per truck with all that new emission stuff on it. On the purchasing side of the house, it's interesting trying to get pickup trucks and big trucks right now. We had 3 trucks that we purchased through a bid that we did, and Irwin Ford got it. Waited a year, Ford, not Irwin Ford, but Ford itself canceled the order. And at the same time, they told us you can order it again at the current prices, but we're not gonna guarantee you're gonna get it in a year. So basically, we had to go out and we found what was on the street and the dealerships at the time and bought those at the prices, that basically a person coming off the street would buy it to be able to replace those vehicles. On the CDL side of it, we got lucky. We ordered one in May of last year at the end of a contract, and they still had some build slots open on the state contract. They finished it late May. We just picked it up today. Okay, so that's a year from the time we ordered it to the time that we got it. Present projections just for the truck chassis is if you order it now, and that's if you can order it now, because they only have certain windows when you can order it, it's 2 years before you're gonna get it. So if we're gonna get for this type of equipment, we're changing the paradigm of how we think of replacements plan. You're thinking that far ahead to be able to order it, how you're gonna fiscally support it, so that it's ready for your delivery when you need it 2 years down the road. Construction equipment seems to be a little bit better. Certain things are on hand, you can get it. Others are up to a year wait. Okay, so this is what the Energy Information Administration projected as of May 4th. So I budgeted at 465. EIA predicted for this year $3.90. The local price, Citgo, that's where we fuel up, was $4.19, and they're predicted for 2024 $3.62. Again, this is retail, but you got to be able to compare apples to apples. So that's how that sits. So we tend to be in this area higher than the national average just because of heating fuel and everything else that's in competition with the same grade of diesel. On the gasoline side,
Sorry, when you say that, the retail prices around here seem better than what I see in, other parts of New England. I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of
when they get,
why you say that.
when they say EIA, that's the national prediction, not a local one. So that's also includes Midwest rolled into it, the West Coast.
No, I was just picking up on what you said, that it's more expensive here.
More expensive here compared to what the national average is, because they're taking into effect all those lower costs that are in the area that actually produces and refines the oil.
I guess the question is, do you budget based on the EIA or do you budget based on local conditions?
I budget based off of EIA because I find that if you take everything into effect, they're very generally close to what the local conditions are gonna be.
I got a question.
Council Susie?
Are these prices less the taxes that we have to pay?
No, this, when EIA does it, that's what you're paying when you go to a pump.
But that's not what we pay.
That's not what we pay.
What did we
So,
budget? I guess I'm trying to get an understanding, what did we budget?
I budgeted at 465, because that's what the prediction was back when I had to turn my budget in back in December.
But why do you budget at that high a level if the prices we can get a credit on taxes and everything like that?
Because the EIA at 465 is the national average, and we tend to be higher than the national average. So if you're taking the taxes out, we get closer to being the national average.
How much taxes are we talking? Excuse me.
Depends
sir.
upon the nature of the fuel. If diesel's a little bit higher than gasoline, you're in the neighborhood about 20 to 25 cents, depending upon which fuel you're talking about.
You have-
Council Susie?
Do you have any idea how many gallons we burn of gasoline and of diesel?
I'd have to go back and check the numbers, but I know we burned, I think it's around 15,000 gallons a year of gasoline.
Just your department,
Oh, that's everybody.
including the police department?
I'd have to go back and check to see, but I think gasoline is around 15,000 gallons a year. Yep. We're able to get that right off the database for the cards that we have. Any other questions on this? Okay. Swapping over to the sanitary sewer fund, you've heard a lot of this as we were doing the budget adjustment. Best guess right now for 2024, 69% of the SSS budget will be going to pay for Winnipesaukee River Basin. That's the best guess. Probably the thing that really impacts us the most positively is we're now, in the 1st of July, we're going into the second year of the adjustment on how they spread operations and maintenance costs across all the member communities. And you can see that we're dropping from just about 50% to about 43 1/3. So that's some savings that we're gonna see, and it really depends upon what the expenditures are for the Winnipesaukee River Basin, how much we actually save. And they're experiencing the same thing that we have. They've got inflation, deferred maintenance, and debt service is what's driving the program. Of course, we still, all funded by ratepayers with a little bit of for the next few years supplement from the taxpayers. For the most part, we use bonds, or we'll be using bonds and Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund in the future. Northern Lakeport Sewer Project, that's the one that's underway right now. And we've got 2 pump stations, Hillcrest and Blackbrook, we've got to do some work to get them to last for a few more years or improve their ability. And we're really focused on lining. On the sanitary sewer ordinance update, the private systems operations maintenance reporting, we're working on that. We've got the next public hearing scheduled for the 24th of July. But the money's already been programmed in the budget for fiscal year 2025 to begin the private sewer cleaning and inspection program, where we would clean the sewers, we'd inspect it, provide the information of what they got to correct, to the private sewer systems.
So, may I,
Yes, go ahead, Counselor
So-
Cheney.
we're gonna pay for the inspection
And the cleaning,
and the cleaning.
yes.
So what's left is if there's a crack in the pipe or something, they have to take care of that.
Right, and
But,
they have to do the normal type stuff for it. By that, I mean, they gotta have a plan if they have a sanitary sewer spill. They have to have everything in place to be able to respond, report, and keep track of everything.
right, but I just wanna be sure I understand.
Yep.
We talked about paying for these the inspections of these
Right.
private systems.
And that's what this
That's
piece
what
is.
this- Okay,
Right.
thank you
But
very much.
But they have a lot of work that they've got to do themselves that's really administration and planning wise to get ready just for reporting purposes.
Okay,
Because they have to have standard operating procedures in place. In the event of a spill, this is who you call, this is how you do it.
Yep.
If a resident has a problem with it, who do they call to get their system
Got it.
checked? In the future, we're gonna be really focused on lining based off the budget, and at some point in the distant future, we've got some major work we have to do in the Washington Street area, and then even out further, when we go to do Union Ave from Main Street to Guilford Ave, that's just about complete rebuild of the utilities, water, sewer, and drainage, just because of the age and condition of it. Subject to your questions.
So, Wes,
Yes,
as far as staffing is concerned, okay, it's just a matter of being, in your words, it's a matter of being competitive.
correct.
So in other words, so we're looking at actual construction wages.
In talking with some of the contractors that we deal with a lot, they typically lose 1 to 2 people every couple of weeks because they're jumping to someone who's paying a higher salary. But they may come back because the grass may not be greener at the other place. Most of them have complained that they've made job offers, went through, did all the drug testing and everything, and the person never shows up. So,
Okay, all right. Are we in the process of looking at that?
The collective bargaining agreements were just signed this year, so we're looking at a couple years before that. However, if you remember, in a couple different departments, when we ran into these problems, we found some creative ways for different incentives, sign-on incentives, education incentives, those types of things that we were able to stay within our existing budgets, but make some things happen. Director and I have been working to brainstorm on these ideas. We've already met, not in the negotiations, because it's not negotiations, but met with the unions to talk about what can we do to be successful, how do we use the same model that we used in some of the other departments. We're not there yet, but we certainly are working on it. We've had multiple meetings. So I think we are trying to be creative and try to figure something out before we do have a couple more years before the contract expires.
Thank you. Any other questions? Counselor Phelps? You all set?
I'm good, thank you.
Counselor Susie? All right, Wes, I think you're, unless anyone else has last minute?
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
Chief? Chief, before we start, would you like to go through a presentation or be interrupted?
Probably go through the presentation if that's okay with the council.
That's your call.
Chief, can I get that copy you were gonna give me for the mayor when you get a?
Before the chief starts, I'd like to welcome the commissioners. Greatly appreciated that you're attending and joining us.
All right, good evening.
Chief, can I say a few words?
Absolutely.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but just a couple of comments. Number one, the commission would like to thank the city council for their ongoing support for the department. I think that the fact is that we have a collaborative relationship is really important and makes things run, very smoothly. Would also like to remind the city council that the LaCoinda Police Department undergoes double scrutiny. Scrutiny every day by the citizens in the city, the people they come in contact with. But the police department is one of the few organizations that puts itself under professional scrutiny through its involvement with the Kalea project. And I think that is something that needs to be noted. The commission would like to let the city council know that we fully support the chief and his command staff, and they have managed to, over the years, develop an outstanding department that is pro-citizen. They have community outreach. They have many activities within the department that people don't know about. And I wanted to say that the police department is more than just an organization that serves the city and the citizens. It's an inherent part of this community. And I want to publicly thank them for doing that. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Doug Whittam.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, city manager. It's my pleasure to present to you our budget for this year. Starting with the 2022 officers killed in the line of duty, I think it's important to recognize this. There were 245 law enforcement officers killed across the country last year. That's a lot. 25 canines died in the line of duty as well. I'll start with the nitty-gritty of what's driving our increases to our budget this year. There was an increase of $346,000 in salaries. A lot of this was contractual obligations resulting from the first of a 3-year agreement with the collective bargaining unit regarding step and COLA increases, as well as increases to the shift differential and mandated health insurance increases. As you may recall, in last year's contract, dental insurance was approved as part of the first of the 3-year contract. This was an increase of $18,000, which was not funded at that time. And the last part of the driving forces of increases results from outside contracted services. A lot of our technology that we use is absolutely leading and cutting edge in this state, and quite honestly, probably in New England. There's a cost to that. There's a cost to technology, and there's a cost to that relating to the connectivity and voice internet for our command post vehicle, for our drone program, for new software, computer security, and then lastly, our contracted computer consultant, which is CJIS certified. Our computer system, no doubt, is separate from city IT for a purpose because of the security of the information. We get so many attempts to be hacked. It's a criminal justice agency, and there's a purpose for that. Having a consultant, we have someone in-house that does a lot of this work. By having an outside consultant that is CJIS, which is Criminal Justice Information Service, provided by the FBI, the certification is super important. Grant funding, we constantly scour for grants. We are always looking to take advantage of grants and bring that money home to Laconia and to New Hampshire. In the last 3 years, we were able to attain $3 million, or just over $3.2 million. Last year, we got $711,000. So we know how important it is to be fiscally responsible, and we certainly take that very seriously. $45,000 of that was through the Granite Shield program for drug enforcement, motor vehicle enforcement for $22,000, radar equipment, accident investigation equipment, community outreach for $20,000 related specifically to highway safety. Camera trailers that we just obtained 2 of them. We will be using those for Motorcycle Week, $98,000. The cops hiring grant, we had $125,000 last year in cops hiring grant. Technology, while this is technology, we're moving towards integrating so we can integrate cameras specifically with the school program right into our dispatch center. So if there were an active shooter, we could stream that video live in our dispatch center and our command post, and probably have live video footage of the shooter before officers arrive on scene. The importance of this is that if we enter the high school, if there's a school shooter in the cafeteria on the right side of the school, and we enter on the left side of the school, you probably only hear the gunshots. So it dictates how our tactics are gonna be derived, how we're gonna respond to that active shooter. Having that video saying he's in the cafeteria changes our response and hopefully will save lives. That was through working through Senator Shaheen's office. In fact, she wanted to come up a couple weeks ago, but her schedule didn't allow it because she wanted to see the technology that we have. A storage facility, which is a multi-year project. We have already secured $98,000 from Congressman Pappas for that storage building, for evidence storage and equipment storage. So some of the new technology, police work is not what it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year. It is so technologically driven. It's just changed drastically. Some of that is social media. If you follow our social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn, you'll notice a significant change in our presence over the last 6 months or so. That was a concerted effort that we've worked very hard to achieve. We have over 11,000 followers just on our Facebook page alone. Now that's just our audience members, which is 21% of our followers. We have an additional 78% of followers that are not actual followers that comment on our stuff. In the past 28 days, our Facebook page has reached over 23,000 people. That's pretty impressive. Top content based upon that outreach was reels, short video reels, 12.2, 5.8, and 5.7. Again, pretty significant. Some of the other technology that we've acquired this past year, the SpiderTech interactive community engagement software, which I'm sure you're aware of the news media release on that, allows for interactive software to enhance customer service, timely real-time updates to emergency callers reporting things. So if you call the police department and the officer's delayed for a priority call, you're gonna get a text message notifying that, hey, the officer's delayed by 30 minutes, or whatever the case may be. First police agency in New Hampshire to implement this software. In fact, we were talking to the vendor, and in discovering that, we asked him if we could have a first-time buyer's discount, which we achieved. Yes, 4 separate modules to this: patrol investigations, an insights module, and a community notifications module. The patrol module I just spoke about, so investigations. If you call and report a criminal investigation, this will follow you through and update you on the case status. So when an arrest is made, you will get a notification that an arrest has been made. When the case has been referred to prosecution, you'll get a text notification making you aware of that. Keeping the victim informed is super important for us, and this software helps us do it. The community notifications will be pushed out shortly. This is a link that people can opt in to build a database so we can do a group community notification, whether it's for community activities, whether it be for other things. As the database grows on a voluntary opt-in basis, we could use it for emergency notifications if need be. This year we moved, on the advice of our computer consultant, we moved to a new security called Imprivata with single sign-on. This will enable all of our computer equipment to have multi-factor authentication. So that's our laptops in our cars, our department cell phones, our desktops, to make it a more secure computer environment. Everything we do is computer-based. First Arrive-In is a technology that we have adopted within the station. It's on several monitors throughout the police department. This is a way of internal communication where we can put messages up to employees, but also more importantly, it's a real-time tracker of what is going on out in the field as far as calls for service. So when you walk by these boards, it lists all the active calls for service. In addition, it sends out alerts if there's a serious call, like a robbery in progress or something like that, to alert people within the station. Highlights of some of our annual in-service and specialty training, just so you know what goes into our training program. Total specialty training hours for last year was 2,516 hours across our employees. That's additional specialty training. Our in-service training hours on an annual requirement just to maintain their certification, our standard is 36 hours per sworn officer. I can tell you New Hampshire Police Standards and Training is 8 hours. Continual online training that our officers are required to do. Exclusive of those above training hours, they don't include the 4-month police academy, which is looking to expand to 5 and eventually 6 months, or our 6-week in-house training academy, or our field training program. Department de-escalation, we've heard a lot about de-escalation, a lot about mental health in the news lately. Our department, between the years of 2020 and 2022, in 2 years, our officers received 2,592 hours of de-escalation training specific. We applied for a de-escalation training project grant, which was a grant through the COPS office for $200,000. That grant we were awarded, which provided for Axon virtual reality training equipment. Essentially, it's goggles that you wear to immerse you in the situation to deal with mental health and substance abuse issues in dealing with violent encounters. Again, we were cutting edge in obtaining that technology. That grant paid for 4 officers entirely to certify them as de-escalation instructors so they can come back here and teach to our officers in-house. It also paid for 2 regional classes that will be scheduled later this year with instructors from the Verbal Judo Institute, which we will open up on a regional basis, completely funded by that $200,000 grant. National Association of Mental Health provides a 40-hour crisis intervention team. Right now, most of our sergeants have all gone through it. Our goal is to have all of our training officers go through it as well. If you might recall, several years ago, the governor's office established the Law Enforcement Accountability Commission for Community Transparency in Law Enforcement. This is headed under the realm of New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council. It requires an additional training and annual training in de-escalation ethics, implicit bias, and cultural responsiveness. That hours is, I think it's 2 hours on officer, right? For each one, so it's 6 hours. So I'm proud to let you know that we are part of an organization called the Police Executive Research Forum. This is a national organization. They look at police incidents across the country. They study them. They look for ways of doing things better. After the Memphis, Tennessee incident, you might recall that Tyree Nichols was beaten and killed by 5 police officers by the Scorpion Unit in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm proud to tell you that we were one of 7 agencies across the country, including Palm Springs, California, Santa Ana, California, Anne Arundel County, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, Charleston, South Carolina, and Columbia, South Carolina. So we were one of 7 agencies that PERC came to. The executive director flew up here from Washington, D.C. to do what they called a Monday morning quarterback of this incident. This involved showing us 8 minutes of actual body camera footage from that incident in Memphis. Discussion points that were takeaways were talks about tactics, communication, supervision, lack of de-escalation, proportionality, duty to intervene, culture, prevention, early warning systems, and body cameras. I can't tell you that that's not cutting edge when we host that here in Laconia for all of New England. According to Chuck Wexler, who's the executive director, moving policing forward by learning from yesterday's incidents to prevent from tomorrow's incidents from occurring, and there's a lot of truth to that. So I talked a little bit about active shooter incidents across the country. We saw the tragedies just Saturday in Franklin, which was horrible. So these things do happen. They do happen close to home. There have been more mass shootings with more victims in the first 4 months of this year than the same time period last year. Mass shootings in the U.S. are on a record pace in 2023 so far, with 115 lives, 22 mass killings over 126 days. That's an average of 1 mass shooting a week. Preparation for that, we conducted a full-scale active shooter exercise, which I'm sure you're aware of, this past April. This is our third or fourth full-scale active shooter exercise here in Laconia. It involved all of our law enforcement partners, from police department to the school department to other agencies. It started with a tabletop command training exercise in command and control that was hosted at the Hewitt Technical Center. And then it moved on to the full-scale exercise, which took place at the Pleasant Street School. Some of the competencies that were tested was unified incident command, immediate police action, rapid response, hot zones, warm zones, cold zones, casualty collection points, inner-outer perimeter control, integrating rescue task forces in warm zones, community notification, and victim reunification. This drill was completely funded by New Hampshire Homeland Security on a grant that we again obtained through them. It provided an exercise coordinator from New Hampshire Homeland Security, provided outside evaluators from them, and it consisted of 3 separate evolutions of training. Blank training rounds were used to create stress inoculation. There was moulage on victims to create reality. Lessons learned from this. So there was a debrief after every single training evolution. At the completion of the exercise, there was another full debrief, and then they're going to follow up by a written after-action report by the New Hampshire Department of Homeland Security. So I'm pleased to say we've done one of these at the Elm Street School, the Pleasant Street School, the middle school, the high school, so we're pretty well prepared for an active shooter event. Not that we can't always learn, but we are doing everything possible to be prepared for such an event. Department programs and community outreach. We conducted a number of community outreach programs, including the Citizen Police Academy, CALEA National Accreditation Victim Services Unit, led by volunteers. We have a school resource officer and liaison officer program, so schools that we don't have school resource officers in. Officers work in that area, stop into the schools on a regular basis and make contact with the school staff. I can't tell you how much that means on an elementary school like a Pleasant Street or an Elm Street school to have an officer just stop in and walk through the building for a little bit, or stop in and have lunch. The Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force, Detective Sergeant Ben Black is here to talk about the ICAC particularly, because I think it's important that you as a council leading the city know the complexities of some of these investigations involved in these horrific cases. Community service officers, National Night Out, community presentations that we do numerous times, whether it be active shooter presentations, bank presentations, and many, many different types of community presentations. Special Olympics, Make-A-Wish, Big Brothers, Big Sisters programs, vacant house checks, college internship program, a high school internship program, drug abuse resistance education, the DARE program, which is leading up to their graduations this week. The TIP 411, people can anonymously report tips to us via this hotline. Many people don't want to call the police and tell us what's going on in the neighborhoods. They do want to leave tips. They do want to tell us what's going on. Those anonymous tips lead to solving a lot of crimes. We do numerous school and community tours. We have a cop card program, drug collection box, DEA National Drug Take Back program, Coffee with a Cop programs, ride-along programs, in the Hewitt Criminal Justice class. So just an update on our CALEA accreditation. So this is, as you know, this is a commission made up of 21 commissioners. It's a full spectrum of public safety leadership, including judges and lawyers and many others, so it's not just police officers. CALEA is the premier credentialing agency for law enforcement. That's internationally. There's 483 standards that we must meet on a regular and reoccurring basis. Approximately 1,000 agencies out of 17,000 agencies across this country are CALEA accredited. I'm proud to tell you that there's 15 police agencies in New Hampshire out of over 200 law enforcement agencies in New Hampshire that are CALIA accredited, and we are one of them. The assessment process is an extensive ongoing self-assessment that takes place each and every day. On an annual basis, there's the annual remote compliance service review. And then there's a quadrennial site-based assessment review, and then there's a final review before the CALIA Commission every 4 years. So we are currently in year 2 of our current accreditation status. This year we had 213 standards that were reviewed. They log into our records management system. They view these standards themselves, and they issue a report. I can tell you that we were 100% compliance verified. 2024, which is next year, we're looking at our 4-year on-site physical review. The effects of the opioid crisis. This year we saw 59 overdoses, 5 overdose deaths, and 54 needles. I can tell you that since 2014, that's an average of 8.44 people that have died of overdoses here in Laconia. That is all I have, unless there's questions. Sir.
Council,
So on the last item, I think last budget we had provided, I think, an extra $20,000 or $25,000 to do some work creatively. Can you refresh my memory? Was that the work that was done on the homelessness? Is that where we put those dollars?
Yes, that's correct. The majority of that money we haven't spent. We haven't felt that we could use it specifically for that. We have used it for some patrols specifically targeted in that. We were going to use it when we did the operation on Spruce Street, which was not needed, and I think we're going to look to carry that over for next year.
Yeah, we'll look to carry it over, and we did use it with some stuff at the library that was brought forward for homelessness outreach, and so it's being used, just not fully expended.
And on the, see, behind you in the back there, sorry, having a brain cramp on your name.
Officer Adams.
Officer Adams, yes. In terms of the program that he had initiated, kind of what's the status of that? And I know that I know you're doing statewide work, Officer Adams, and you're doing work in homeless, and appreciate the work you're doing, both here and the state level.
Sure, I can give you a brief update. So as far as the grant itself, the COSAP grant, we actually just had our site monitoring through the AG's office, and it went really well. And so I am working with 8 other police departments across the state, and that grant will expire on September of 2024. But what we're going to do is, in speaking with the grant manager for the AG's office, we are going to file for a 1-year no-cost extension because of the fact that the federal grant came down so late because of COVID and the restrictions and things that were still in place at the federal level. So that one we're hoping will expand to that degree. And then as far as having Steve Orton, Detective Orton, as the person in my position, he's doing very well. He's actually added a few different initiative type things, and he's regularly meeting with officers to update them on what he's doing and the outreach that he's conducting. So he's still filling in, meeting with all the community partners and doing all the things that I did. And he's actually doing a little bit more, even with some new type initiatives. As far as the homeless initiatives that we've taken in the city, we have the established mayor's task force now on housing, and we still have a lot of different. The mayor's also sitting on the Council on Housing Stability with me at the state level, so we're still working and kind of keeping state level initiatives, integrating them with what we're doing here in Laconia. So we're really working on that. I'm also working, we just received an AHIP grant, which will be, it's being run by the Housing Action Program at the state level. So they're going to be working with us on new landlord incentive programs as far as the housing, stuff like that. So there's that aspect of it. as you know, homelessness really stems from many different facets. So there's no one thing, right? And so obviously with our housing market, you know very well that we're at a very low rate. So it's very difficult to find housing, affordable housing. So, but we are working on different initiatives at the city level to with the housing task force to try to see if we can, come up with alternatives. We're working on it. I know it's been an issue. The Spruce Street encampment, I'm working with the city manager to figure out the cleanup costs, what that's going to be. I have a couple of bids and quotes that were sent to me. So the city manager, we were just talking, we're going to hook up probably tomorrow, at least to have a conversation about where we're going to be at with that. And money from Lakes Region Mental Health for the emergency cold weather shelter that they had for this past winter. There is some money left over in that we're going to try to utilize to pay for the cleanup costs. We got the approval from the state to be able to do that, so we're looking to move on that aspect as well.
Where do you see as the opportunities that can be done locally about the situation more than we're doing today that are a function of not having money or something else?
Yeah, so the challenge obviously is trying to really figure out ways, because we really haven't done a lot on the prevention side to try to keep people housed, right? So what we're trying to work on now, as far as that task force, one of the committees is that we've started will be on the prevention side. And it's hard to really gauge it right now just because of the fact that we just started the task force back up. But we do have committees that are going to be dedicated to working on those types of initiatives, prevention, education, and things like that. So it's really hard to gauge right now, but I think if we can really beef up the prevention aspect of it, where we're getting the information out there to people that are one car repair away, right, to losing their housing, it'll give us an opportunity to try to work on keeping them in their housing.
So we council will work with the administration on revising the welfare policies, and we were tried to look at things that might have been in our policies that might have been impediments to keeping people where they are at. But in terms of the balance of money that's available to would not a good use of that be to be able to experiment with some things that would do that car repair so the person doesn't lose the job, and that whole
I would agree.
cycle of things that happen. I guess I'm just looking for us to try to think about where we could be more creative on the early intervention side.
I would agree. I think the challenge, obviously, and I know the chief and I have spoke about this, is where we have now really dismantled the Spruce Street encampment. They've taken up residencies at different locations, which has is going to increase the call volume to our patrol officers from private citizens and things like that. But I also think that there's going to be that balance of what we can do to help citizens that are on the edge. There are programs out there that we do work with, that Steve especially and I work with, that will help defer those costs and things like that. And so it's kind of finding that balance. But we also have to look at when we do have issues that pop up at Rotary Park or at the library or anything like that, right? Sometimes it's very difficult to take a patrol officer and continuously put them walking that, and it could be easier to utilize some of that funding to be able to make the directed patrols needed, especially when we do like things in the park at Rotary Park and things like that with the Belknap Mill or downtown, things like that. So it's kind of finding that balance. I would agree with you though, it's not an easy fix, right? That's the hard part.
I guess the the issue is trying to get you to think about, or, and I know you're probably thinking about, so sorry to
No,
use
no,
that
no.
phrase, but just in terms of, there's a population that may be lost to
Yep.
to being able to do something with. It's the new people that would come that we could potentially prevent from, and when I
Yes.
say new people, I'm not saying from outside, I'm talking within the community.
Yep.
That are struggling, that are that one bill away from that cascade of losing housing because they can't
Yeah.
deal with it. I think that we gotta go upstream and realize there may not be much we can do with a certain population, but there may be more prevention that we could be putting in place, because the patrols, while necessary, I think that's just moving it around.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I think what we could do is probably, I could bring this up to the mayor's task force, and see, bring the chief in and kind of see what we could do to utilize some of that funding for that. I know that there's been talk about working on different initiatives within that task force, so, I'm sure that we could find ways to really help somebody that's in need in that way.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Chief, I have a question. As far as active shooters are concerned in emergency situations, I know you've done a lot of work in the schools, but do the officers ever have a chance to go to some of the other buildings, larger buildings in the city, and just visit so that they familiar with the exits and the entrances and the nooks and crannies of whatever?
They do. We definitely encourage them to use a lot of their uncommitted patrol time to do that, to reach out to places like, Avid or New Hampshire Ball Barons or the hospital places, because you're absolutely right. An active shooter in those places is different than a school. A lot of the driving forces are different, but knowing the building layout is very, very important. So as part of that camera system I was talking about, which is a work in progress that we have partial funding for through Senator Shaheen's office, that is expandable through a program called FUSIS, which we're looking to do, down the road through hopefully funding in the next year or two through those same funding sources. But that is something that like Avid could sign on to that. They could allow us to access their video cameras. It also allows any video system to integrate with our system on a voluntary basis. Or if you don't want to register your camera, say you have a Ring camera at home and you want to register it, but you don't want to give us a live feed to it, that's fine. You can register it with us, but we could circle a certain area of video that we're looking for on a map, and with the click of one circle on a map, we could send everyone in that area that's registered their Ring cameras an email requesting video footage from this specific time frame for this specific incident. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Anyone else? Chief, Councilor,
Much more financial oriented question. The increase in health insurance seemed to be higher than what we budgeted overall. Is it because we've had a change in mix in the police department, family plans and other?
I can't speak, of course, for what the chief has done on the police department, but I know on the city side, I think what we've seen is more of a mix of the newer employees having a great tendency to opt out of the program, bringing the overall cost down. And so we see that kind of mix of what people are looking for within the
I'm seeing over a 10% increase in the health insurance line. Is it, if you don't have the answer tonight, just get some sense of why?
Well, the increase in percentage was about 7%.
Right.
And then other than that, what we'd be looking at would be the mix of employees.
It's almost 13%. That's why so I'm saying it's almost double what the rest of the city experienced.
I got 11.73% increase in the insurance over this year's costs compared to put down for next year's.
We can delve into that and find out what the driving force is behind that for sure. Get you an answer in the next day or two.
Well,
More than
isn't,
adequate.
isn't part of the question, somebody said, perhaps Mr. Smith, if you have employees who've been with you longer and have larger families or whatever, that can affect these.
Yeah, so I was just trying to understand what it is. I'm not saying it's bad or good. It could be
Yep,
that,
yep.
that you've been lucky to fill positions and those people have families or staff that have stayed there, or it could be something else. That's.
I think we can get you a breakdown of what we had like last year, or maybe go back 2 years as far as breakdowns of plans, and then compare it to this year's request.
Yeah, if more people are taking advantage of the buyout, that should be suppressing it, not increasing it.
Correct.
That's right, and forgive me, what I meant is I think it's being depressed on the city side. Probably more so than it's being depressed on the police side.
Chief, one other quick question I have. As far as capital outlay, is that a new server or is that just
That is a new server.
is that the one that was finally on its way out?
Correct. This one
Okay.
is end of life, and, you know, everything we operate on runs off of that server.
Okay. Council Lippman?
Just in terms of your vacancy rate currently, do you have any positions that are open?
We currently have 2 positions that are open.
And how long have they been open?
Just
roughly?
recently, in the last month and a half,
So you've been pretty well staffed.
we have.
I'd like to add to that. And I've said this to several people, but I think it's important to understand. When I first started in his business, the state police would post a job at 8 in the morning. It was filled by 4 in the afternoon. Today, they have 70 or 80 openings, and they're having difficulty finding them. This police department has almost full staff, and I think there's a lot of things the chief and his senior staff do to really give us a department that exceeds expectations, certainly from my perspective. I mean, I sit here and listen to him talk about technology, and I want to go to sleep because I don't know any of that stuff. I just know that my neighbors say, "Oh, I got a text from the police department about," and I'm thinking, what the hell was that when I was doing this stuff? So, I don't mean to prattle on. I want to make it real plain. He's down 2 people. 2 people. Call other departments in the area, down 5, down 7, down 10, whatever. And here we are in Laconia, down 2. And I think you've got somebody lined up for one of those positions. if
We
I
actually
remember.
have, we have interviews coming on this Friday. We have one that's already filled. He's waiting to get out of the Marine Corps. We started his background when he was home in April on leave.
Yep.
He's due back in July, so we're looking at putting him on. We have another background investigation that's being done. I don't know what the outcome of that is, but we're doing interviews on Friday, and it's nice. We have that CRO program that do the parking enforcement during the summertime. They're college kids, and it's nice that we have 2 of them that are interested in participating in the oral board interviews this Friday. So they both just graduated from college this spring, so that helps.
You're to be complimented, Chief. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. I mean, you know, recruitment is tough, and I think our best shot at recruitment is homegrown, whether it be the CRO program, whether it be the Hewitt Criminal Justice Program, that type of stuff where we get to know them and learn about them. They get to know about the department. They get attached to the department versus doing a blast recruitment test. We don't get many applicants that way.
Yeah, just compliment you as well, and I think also had some personal experience with my daughter going through the law enforcement program, and it's a very good program, and the people that were attracted to it were very good talents.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Laconia is a good place to work for a cop. I'll tell you right now.
Council Felch?
So I just want to thank you, Chief, and your entire department for everything you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the patch.
Thank you, Chief. I don't see any other questions, and thank you very much, and the commissioners and all for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other business to come before the council?
Oh, good.
Hearing none,
You don't have a list of questions?
at 8:21, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Numbers, but that's the response to the Medicaid question that you sent out.
Tony?
I haven't come back and prepared anything.